Okay, so we can actually begin. All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming, and welcome to the Raft debate by the Logos Undergraduate Journal of Philosophy. So, our premise today is a simple one. After a worldwide apocalyptic event, for the sake of tonight, we invite you to pick your favorite: zombies, nuclear bombs, global penguin takeover, etc. You and a group of your peers are on a life raft, desperately looking for land. As you paddle, an odd sight enters your field of view. 4 of your Cornell professors bobbing in the water, frantically treading for life. They plead for your help. Let us on your raft. The issue is, you only have enough space, food, and water for one professor. You and your peers hastily confer with each other and give them a draconian task. Tell us why you should be on this raft. Tell us why you're better than the rest of the professors. Tell us why you and your area of expertise is vital for helping us rebuild society. With that in mind, let me introduce our panel by giving their departments and a very basic description of their current research interests. First, we have Professor Karen Bennett from the Philosophy Department. Her research interests lie in metaphysics and the philosophy of mind. Next, we have Professor Robert Shepard from Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. His research currently lies in soft robotics. We have Professor John Weiss from the History Department, whose primary focus is on international humanitarian work. Finally, we have Professor Bruce Monger from the Earth and Atmospheric Sciences, whose research is focused on using satellite imagery to analyze phytoplankton, and whose passion lies in teaching the largest class at Cornell. Finally, let me introduce our devil's advocate, Professor Sam Nelson from Industrial Labor Relations. The devil's advocate has a very specific task: spread chaos and knock down all the professors. He doesn't want any of the professors to get on the raft. He will spend the duration of the debate trying to attack all the other professors and their arguments. Now, let me spend a few seconds to talk about the rules and the process. So, the 4 professors will have 5 minutes each in the first round. Then there's going to be a 5-minute rebuttal from Professor Sam Nelson. Then in the second round, each professor is going to get a 5-minute rebuttal and chance to create additional comments. And then immediately after each professor, Professor Sam will have 2 minutes to talk about what he thinks about their argument. And then we will conclude and vote on who we think won the debate. Finally, let me give you your task. Leave your biases and preconceived notions behind. Tonight is about recognizing the value of and importance of fields that we have no experience with, and appreciating their importance to our society. Carefully listen to everyone's argument and their counter-arguments. Listen to the devil's advocate and what he has to say, but be careful. His silver tongue and clever wordplay can mislead you into believing the wrong thing. Pay attention, and then once the professors are finished, we shall vote on who we believe should be led onto our raft. Choose wisely. The fate of humanity lies in your hands tonight. Thank you and enjoy. Yeah, so we're just going to go in order.
Okay, thanks guys for organizing this. I was going to put on my best bearded toga for the occasion, but the beard thing's not really working out very well. So, why should you let me on the life raft? The short answer is because philosophers ask special kinds of questions and they answer them or address them in a special kind of way. So there's 2 parts to that, right? That there's something special about our questions and that there's something special about how we go about addressing them. So I'm going to try to unpack both of those things in the reverse order. So first, for the moment, set aside the particular questions that we actually ask and just think about how we talk about them, how we try to answer them. Philosophers are really good at problem solving, at careful and reasoned discussion about really difficult and delicate topics like, who gets the last ration bar, or who has to deal with the seagull poop, right? We are very rational, very logical. We prize clarity above all things. We prize argumentation and reason. We hate things like appeals to authority or whoever's got the biggest stick. Use of flowery rhetoric that doesn't really saying anything, or intentionally confusing jargon. We hate that stuff. So basically, we are really, really good at adjudicating things and making decisions, problem solving. So in the context of the life raft, I'm going to selling it as that, like problem solving, adjudicating difficult matters. But really the real point here is that philosophy teaches critical thinking skills, critical reading, critical writing, just unpacking arguments. There's no better way to hone those skills than by doing philosophy. And I'm not just saying that. There's data and stuff. Philosophy majors are always among the top scorers on the LSAT. One study I saw today said that this past year, classics actually won, but philosophy is always in the top handful. They're the best, philosophy majors do the best of all of the humanities on the GMAT, only beaten by physics, math, and engineering. The verbal GRE scores of philosophy majors are better than any other major. What do they call it? Analytical writing, again, better than any other major. Quantitative, all right, the engineers and the physicists and so forth beat us on that, but we get about the same as the philosophy majors do about as well as people who major in the life sciences. The only social science that beats philosophy majors is econ, and it is the best of all the humanities. Now, let me be clear, I would never suggest that you guys care about things like standardized test scores, or about what doors they could open for you. That would be just crass. But what I'm really suggesting is that the things that those tests measure, the kind of critical reasoning, critical thinking that those tests measure, is something that philosophy is really good at teaching you. And those skills are useful everywhere. Every field of study, every job, on the life raft, when rebuilding civilization. Okay, so that all had to do with how we go about asking questions, and that philosophers bring a special skill set. Or how we go about trying to address the questions, and that philosophers have a special skill set. Now I want to move on to the point about what the questions actually are that philosophers address, because it might seem surprising, but at least some of the questions that philosophers address are directly relevant to life on the life raft and life, once we eventually find our island, right? Particularly questions in political philosophy and ethics. How should we set up the government and legal system? How should decisions be made, by one person or by everybody? How should we allocate scarce resources? What should we do with the old people and the sick people? Should we try to help them, or should we just kill them and eat them, right? Should we force people to have babies to repopulate? Would that be an acceptable thing to do? These are the kinds of questions that philosophers are pretty good at. That's the kinds of questions philosophers ask. So some philosophical questions are directly relevant to the lifeboat situation. Now, admittedly, not all of them are, right? We ask a lot of pretty weird abstract questions too, like, what is causation? What is time? Is there a God? What is beauty? Right? Do we have free will, or are we just buffeted about like paper airplanes in the wind? I'll be the first to admit that those questions don't matter a heck of a lot to our immediate concerns. Our immediate concerns are like finding food and water, keeping warm, right? Making sure we keep having babies. And abstract philosophical questions are not going to help with those things. They're not. But that doesn't mean that those questions don't matter. The fact that they don't matter to our immediate survival doesn't mean they don't matter to our survival, and it doesn't mean that they don't matter at all. They do matter to our survival because they're part of why our survival matters. The very fact that we ask these kinds of questions is part of what makes us be the creature that we are. Look, I get to finish my thought. We're fancy animals, but we're different than other sorts of animals. And part of what makes us different is that we ask these questions. We're reflective creatures by nature. It's part of the human condition. So there's really 2 points here. One is that the fact that we ask these big, hard questions is part of what makes us worth saving. It's part of what makes humans matter more than rocks. And second, look, we can't stop asking these questions. It's part of the human condition. It's part of our nature. If you're going to keep thinking about them, might as well bring me along to help you think about them better.
So you certainly shouldn't bring me for directions. Okay. For how to use a computer. Great. Okay, so you can argue that let's say this stuff. Anyway, monkeys perhaps first started, evolved into us because of tool use. Mechanical engineers are the first, probably one of the first disciplines to actually create machines, that's what it means, and tools. So it is true that if you want law and order, You may want a philosopher, but if you wanted to survive the zombies at first, because of course that's what I believe, that's entirely what I'm envisioning is a zombie apocalypse, that we're going to want weapons and defense to survive that at first. But even before then, we're talking about a lifeboat. The most common form of a lifeboat, not to use some confusing words, is an internally pressurized hull composed of polyester fabric coated in neoprene and polyurethane rubbers. The tubes that make up the hull are typically pressurized to about 4 pounds per square inch, the floor to 10 pounds per square inch, and the keel about 5 pounds per square inch. Their primary mode of failure is through punctures, but you can fix these punctures while you're out at sea if you know how to make a patch out of fish scales and biofluids. So after you have made sure your boat is secure and you can go around in it, you also have to worry about propulsion, communication, starvation, and dehydration. I do not doubt that a meteorologist could guide us in the right direction, but we have to live long enough to get there. To produce water, a mechanical engineer can determine whether limited resources available should be devoted to solar desalination, communication, fishing and algae scavenging equipment, or some combination thereof. And they'll be able to do the calculations to tell you which is most likely to work, given what you have, and what will give the best result. Additionally, it would be great to know how to design a propulsion system that does not concentrate stresses and lead to catastrophic failure of your paddle. So all these things mechanical engineers can do, and after we've arrived safely, we'll need to design and build hunting and farming tools, shelter, irrigation, waste management, zombie defenses, surgical tools, and the podiums on which we have these debates. Mechanical engineers build tools and machines, and that is what we will need to defeat the zombies.
When Allysha sent me the email asking me to participate in this debate, she said I had special qualifications, and she listed military service. Indeed, I was on active duty at Fort Sill and in Korea and at Fort Lee, Maryland. And in Korea, I was deputy commander of an air defense operation, and I did get survival training there. She also cited humanitarian work, and I have witnessed refugees from massacres and have studied people in all kinds of circumstances in which they were trying to survive when their world had collapsed as well. You know, this experience outside the academic world in some ways just only reinforced my conviction of the value of serious and deep study of history. Let's consider our situation here and what we have to offer. Of course, the first thing I can do is say, I'm the oldest one, therefore if you took me on, I'd die first, and therefore you're more fair. But other than that, you don't know how healthy I am or not. Okay, the last thing that you need is technical assistance. Well, you know, history in its study in the academic world has changed. It used to be, well, it's political history, it's kings and battles, and you used to have to learn on command. But now we study all kinds of things. We study everything, from the history of technology, which I have done for about half of my career, with some interruptions and so forth, I could offer you advice on desalinization and how it's been attempted in the past, as well as building machines, even clocks on any place that we have in the land, because I've studied history and I tell you how those developed as well. So I don't have all the technical knowledge for that, but I have a great resource in that broad history that I have studied. All right, the history of oceans, how one gets around oceans. Well, we got a problem here on where we're going, but I can tell you about blue water navigation used in the Pacific by people who go from island to island. So I've got ways of talking about that. Survival itself. Well, you know, one of the things I think I can do is offer you is inspiration. It's pretty desperate. How long have you guys been out there anyway? Good grief. Okay, so I've got to give you some kind of inspiration. The strength of humankind. And I can give you inspiration from the example of Louis Zamperini. Some of you may have already read his book, Unbroken, or the book about him, unbroken about his story, where he drifted for 42 days in a life raft in the middle of the Pacific after his plane developed mechanical trouble and had to crash down and so forth, and I know how he managed to survive. And I can also give you inspiration about leadership. You're going to need somebody to organize this. You know, we know from history that in fact when people are together on a life raft, the interpersonal relations are a little tricky and they develop over time in some really problematic ways. The most greatest inspiration I think I can give you of leadership, of organizing this, is that of Ernest Shackleton, who set out to cross Antarctica with his dogs and his men. First he had to get there. He had to get there in a sailing ship, all right, a wooden sailing ship. It got caught in the ice, it crashed, it squeezed, it sank. There he was with his men. He was in the middle of nowhere. World War I was on. Who was going to rescue him? So he had to find a way to do it. And the rest of the story is absolutely a superb study in leadership, inspirational for that. Learn how he did it. How could he become that kind of leader as well? He never lost a man. He rode 70, with his rest of his, the team that he had chosen to make the trip, 700 miles to South Georgia. He encountered a 100-foot wave. Now, knowing that is going to be very inspirational, isn't it? Okay, rather than calculating the force of a 100-foot wave, you know that Shackleton was able to survive in a 16-foot boat. So that's the inspiration I can also offer you understanding. I can offer who you are. As Professor Bennett said, those kinds of questions do come up. We have a human nature to ask those questions. Military experience shows you too how important it is for the military to know its history, the history of its particular unit as well. They do this, and therefore they reaffirm their identity. They know who they are. The question also of understanding why you're here is another one. Well, what led up to this disaster, right? I can tell you that, hey, zombies don't exist, guys. It comes from Haitian folklore, but they're not out there. Okay, so I can sort of help you with that kind of stuff from what I learned from my experience as well in history and in studying it. How you're going to get along, not only why you're here, what led up to the disaster, how you're going to get along. I learned about the military, our appeals to solidarity, our rituals of solidarity. I suggest that you folks in that life raft, even if you don't pick me, go out there and in fact talk to each other. Develop some rituals of solidarity. Arm wrestling, something like that. Anyway, try that. I can also give you a guide to meaning as well. I'm trying to interpret the meaning of Allysha's gestures there. Does that mean 1 minute or what does that mean?
Time's up.
Okay, I'll save the rest of my offerings to you for later. Thank you.
Thank you all. So first of all, let me just say that, I've lived a nice long life and done a lot of things that people dream of doing. And if you want to pick somebody else who's better than me, I don't have any attachments, and I'm happy to let that go. But with that said, I do feel a little bit like it's unfair for me to be here tonight because this is a raft in the middle of the ocean, and I'm an oceanographer. So I know the location and the directions of all the major ocean currents. I know the location and the direction of all major wind patterns. And I can do a rudimentary job of navigating by the stars. So I think, at least you have half a chance of getting to shore if you take me along. And I think I'm pretty useful when we do get to land. My knowledge of waves and tides means I can be helpful with navigation up and down the coast as we build communities along our coasts. My knowledge of storm surge and tsunamis mean I can keep us safe from those things. I know where the best fishing grounds are, where the coastal upwellings are the strongest. And I think I can do a pretty good job of setting up an aquaculture system to keep us fed in the early parts of our settlements. Oceanographers are very proud of the strong multidisciplinary nature of oceanography. I've had a ton of math, physics, chemistry, geology, and biology. So I can help restart our fundamental basic sciences once we start developing our communities on land. And some of these concepts can help build structures, understand the concepts of human health and disease, help grow crops. I can apply basic ideas of nutrients, needs for phytoplankton and sunlight for phytoplankton to grow. I can apply those to land crops as well, I think. And of course, I can safely develop the ocean resources available to us. Let's see, as an oceanographer, I'm pretty steeped in climate change. So I know that sea level rise will be a meter above current levels by the end of the century, so I know to build our communities safely back away from the shore to accommodate for that. I know that ocean acidification means we shouldn't put all of our eggs in one basket and rely on the ocean for all of our food resources. I also know that we're going to have to address the ideas of heat tolerance in the crops that we grow, because as the planet heats, and by the way, the planet will keep heating even though we stop burning CO2 today. So we have to think about heat tolerances. So I can prepare us for the long term by understanding these impacts that climate change has in store for us. As a biological oceanographer, I'm pretty steeped in the issues of sustainability. I'm not sure what caused this apocalypse, but I am certain that just before the apocalypse occurred, we've taken the Earth nearly to the breaking point on our own, separate from whatever nuclear or zombie apocalypse came upon us. I know that we took 90% of the best fish out of our ocean, that the dead zones along the coast are growing every year. 30% of all of our coral reefs are now dead because of our actions of multiple actions. I won't go into them now because I only have 5 minutes. Biodiversity in general has declined dramatically in our since the industrial era, essentially, in the last 50 years or so in particular. And many scientists now think we're in a 6th mass extinction. So I'm actually super excited for this opportunity. Part of this is the problem that we have with our planet and the sort of the perilous place we've placed it, is that a lot of humans have had this idea that they're separate from nature, that they can do whatever they want for as long as they want, as hard as they want, and everything will just work out fine. And I have this knowledge or this belief that we need to come to a new understanding of our place in nature, that we're one thread in the broader fabric of nature, and I'm excited to be a part of restarting civilization that starts from the starting point of thinking about humanity as being one thread instead of humanity being the center of the universe, and that we grow a new civilization up with this concept in mind of connectedness to nature. And I think we can develop a beautiful society that's even cooler than the one we've been in thus far, that's more connected and steeped in the sort of the spiritual connections of nature and our place in nature and our place in the universe in general. Yeah, I'll end it there.
I'm going to keep my own time.
As the devil's advocate, I find that people look at me in askance. They treat me badly. You can start now. And the reason why they treat me badly is not because who I am, but because of who I represent. I represent the devil. Satan, Beelzebub, Lucifer. Guy's got a bad rap. But I'm not that person. I'm actually here to represent an idea. The idea is you can't think for yourself. No one said that. No one said that. They all said, pick me. I will think for you. Professor Munger, the last to speak, one of the most popular professors with the biggest classroom over in Bailey Hall. He runs it like he's the king. Students worship him. They bow down. They say, give us knowledge, you wise man. Let some of the little tiny pills drop down from your brain, and we'll take the scraps and we'll try to make some kind of thought out of it. But I'm telling you, that's not the only way. I want to talk a little bit about Professor Bennett. Professor Bennett got up and she said, I can think about hard things in special ways. She did suggest, I will note, she did suggest that we might have to think about who to eat or who to force to have babies. I guess the next step is whose babies we eat. These are this person that you're putting on your autograph to start new civilization wants to talk about it. She had 5 minutes. This is one of the first things she brings out. Oh my God, she creeps me out. There's some things worse than the devil. Then the tech guy shows up, 19 minutes late. I got all the answers. First of all, science, gotta militarize things. It's zombies. I was here, you were all here at the very beginning, they're like, we don't know what has caused this apocalypse. He's like, it's zombies. I looked at the data. You heard all the same things we did. He's like, it's zombies. We need weapons and we need them now. I will make the weapons, they will be powerful. Oh my God, we're in an Armageddon. It was probably caused by people like him. They want the weapons that put us in this situation that we're on this. Right? So he's already trying to shift the way the debate goes to, to benefit him, to benefit science, right? To maybe get a Department of Defense grant. Then the professor from history comes up. He was the most interesting to me. Because what he said was, I will do everything, but he didn't talk very much about history except his personal history. Each of you already have a personal history. I think he was wise not to talk about the value of history. And here is why. Because historians always will rationalize that history is important. I have never met a historian that has not said, when they get cornered, that those that do not know history are doomed to repeat it. Well, he's shaking his head. I'm not going to say that. Then what value does history have? It's just stories. Thank you very much, Professor. We'd like to stop hearing about the stories. We're on a life raft. He goes, let me give you some more inspiration about when I was in Korea. Right? No, that's okay. We've heard that story before. No, let me tell you some more. I believe there will be a murder on this raft. When, the 3rd or 4th, 5th, or 90th time he tries to tell you some more inspirational stories, he will be killed. Right? You don't want that on your conscience. Now, Professor Munger was very interesting because he's like, I'm an oceanographer, right? I know everything about oceans. You're in an ocean. Look, you are in a life raft. A life raft is not like a sailing sloop. It's not like, oh, let's hoist the sails and let's do this and everything. You're just kind of drifting along, right? You're not going to be able, I guess he wants you to put your hands in and paddle like you're in the middle of a big ocean. It was interesting. He came in all full of himself before the debate started. Started telling me how great he was and how he was going to win this debate. Started, we call it trash talking. And he mentioned to me that he grew up on a bay in Washington State, right? Don't let him deny this, it's true. But then, during the peak time of his career as an oceanographer, especially the part of the ocean that he's interested in, the deep sea, turned to shit. Like a toilet bowl, right? This happened when he was at the prime of his career, right? And he wasn't able to do anything about it. Failure. What does he do? What does he do? He moves to landlocked Ithaca, New York. So he doesn't have to think about how bad the oceans are. So he doesn't have to be reminded that actually, instead of studying in an academic, esoteric way, what we really need is people that are willing to get their hands dirty, right? And actually try to save the ocean. Maybe pick up some sludge or something that's in there. Maybe kiss a fish. Put it back, right? He's not willing to do that. Why is he willing to do that? Comfy job. Tenure. Big group of people worshiping him in Bailey Hall. I think the choice is easy to decide.
Yes, can we go back in the same order?
Okay, it's going to be a rough act to follow. Okay, I'm going to start, so we have 5 minutes again, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, I don't know if I can have 5 whole minutes of stuff to talk about, but I guess I'll start by addressing what our devil's advocate just said. First thing about, he was complaining that we all just came up here and pontificated at you and, said, I know everything, and complained about one of us in particular just like dispensing scraps of knowledge to their students. I guess he's never taken a philosophy class, because we do not stand up here and be like, this is true, and this is true, and this is true. We give you arguments, and the students are supposed to disagree with me, and we do philosophy. I don't just teach philosophy, we do philosophy together. As far as eating the babies goes, well, if the aqua whatever food system fails, if it's a really, really harsh winter, if there's nothing, winter is coming, if the baby is very, very sick, maybe, I'm not saying we should, but maybe you gotta maximize utility. What about when the baby's already dead and it's the midst of the really hard winter, I'm not saying it is the right thing to do, but I think we better start thinking hard about whether eating the dead is what we ought to do. So that's what I'm for. Not eating the dead. Helping facilitate the conversation. Okay, about our oceanographer. Well, okay, there's not. I would like to point out that he philosophized at the end. The bigger issue here, obviously, as you face the choice of me versus the mechanical engineer, or the historian with military training, or the oceanographer who knows all the currents and stuff. The big issue is obviously some practical questions about immediate survival. And look, I will be the first to acknowledge that you do not want only philosophers on your life raft. You do not want that. Half the time we can't find our shoes, let alone steer the boat. But when you think about who else you want on your life raft, what you want is, someone with some medical training, someone who can build some rudimentary shelters, someone who knows which berries will not kill you, someone who knows, that sort of thing. Somehow I've been thinking about this more in terms of like once we arrived at land, okay, which fish won't kill you or something. And so you need someone with a tremendous amount of practical knowledge of, medical care, finding the right food, and so forth and so on. And despite what my colleagues have said, basically those people aren't professors, right? What you want is that guy in Man vs. Wild. You want Bear Grylls on the life raft, right? So, what I'm trying to say here is that thinking about taking any of us on board, to think about taking any professor to the new society, seems to me to be it's already to value something beyond your immediate survival over the next couple of days. Because if all you care about is the next couple days, then you need a survivalist. You don't need an academic. But if you do value something, or you can see beyond the next couple days or the next couple weeks, then I think a philosopher would be a fine choice to bring along.
And then, am I allowed to ask a question now?
Yeah, so now it's 2 minutes. So just to remind everyone, after every 5 minutes of the professor rebuttal, the devil's advocate will go for 2 minutes.
Oh, just speech or a question?
Just a 2-minute rebuttal.
Okay. So I have just a couple things. First of all, she starts out by saying, or she ends by saying, we're not really valuable as professors. I agree, all right? But she says, but it'll be helpful down the road. My point is, you may never get down the road unless you maximize all the resources you have. One more hungry mouth, and it would seem by her own analysis, by her own analysis, when she starts talking about like eating babies as a possibility, right, which creeps me out even more, right? I'm a little worried about my walk to the parking lot now. But the deal is, she seems to be advocating at least a discussion about strict cost-benefit utilitarianism. And it seems like the end of her speech pretty much said, don't pick me, because I can't help you until way down the road. The other point is, everybody philosophizes. She actually wrote a paper entitled, and here's the name, Spatio-Temporal Coincidence and the Groundling Problem, which words like plentudious primitivist are in it. This is not the kind of discussion you want when you are worried about surviving, all right? So I think in some ways she sort of mischaracterized her own contribution. But at the end, she started feeling a little guilty because she realized she was doing this thing called lying, and started saying, yeah, I probably shouldn't pick any of this. I agree with the last part of the speech.
So first, I think a mechanical engineer could build floors so everybody could get on the ship. So I may have missed the beginning where we didn't say specifically zombies, but one thing is for sure, this doesn't change. At relative velocities. Relative velocities. So no matter what apocalypse there is, penguins, zombies, whatever, we can use that equation to build machines. And what mechanical engineers have done already is build the machines. So even if you have a general concept of how it's been done in the past, you will fail 10 times at least before you get it right. So having that experience is nice to have. What if your boat's cut in half? How will you fix it? So you pick mechanical engineers if you need instant offense, and you kind of do in this situation. We're at an evolutionary disadvantage to every other animal. We've relied on our technology for too long, and if we're out in the open, unless the apocalypse was there's nothing else at all alive anymore, in which case we should give up anyway. I think it was Armageddon Alexander who measured the efficiency of running in, I think it was a horse, or galloping in a horse, compared that to a human, and we were awful. But then he also compared it to a human on a bicycle, and we destroyed them. So machines give us the advantage we need, and mechanical engineers know how to build them immediately. And also, if it was a zombie apocalypse, how did the last episode of Walking Dead end? With walls and guns. We can make both.
Okay, this guy scares me more than the last one. Okay, so I make a direct attack. I say he's about militarizing everything. He comes up and he's like, yes, guns good. More guns. We need more guns. We need to make it just like the TV show, right? This really scares. This is a scientist that says, I get my inspiration from this television show. The television show is not real. Those are actors. There are no real zombies. But I'm afraid that this guy is the mad scientist that we've all feared in our entire life. You've all seen this thing. Finally, those other pesky humans that kept me in check. Now I have my own laboratory. I can do whatever I want. Let me write some more formulas on the board. Right? Let's test some of these guns. Okay, Raft members, run! Right? It's very, very scary, right? I made a very simple argument. Militarization is not a good thing. And when we get a guy that is all crazy about militarization and robots that can be militarized, that's not the way to start the new society. Because what this debate is not really about making it to safety and trying to survive for days. It's a metaphor. A metaphor about how, if we could do it over again, how would we start it? We would start it with someone that wasn't crazy about the military. He's crazy about the military. He's a mad scientist. Do not pick him.
I offered you before technical assistance in the history, technology and the clues that it gives. I offered you inspiration on how to survive and examples like that. I offered you understanding of why this might have happened and who you are and how you get along. And I also am offering you now a guide to the meaning of all this. I reject the idea that I ever proposed that I had it. I gave you inspiration so you could work these things out. And the inspiration of examples from the past. Leadership, but leadership not just a dictatorial leadership. The guide to meaning. What historians have examined people's efforts to find that meaning for a long time, to understand the irrational. In particular, this problem with only basing your understanding of other people and of the world on critical analysis. People are not built only by critical analysis. They have emotions. They have aspirations that seem to many people irrational. Historians know how to take that into account because they see it operating in history as well. People have sought in the past the meaning of life in searching for the good, the true, and the beautiful, to serve your fellow human being, to seek immortality in art, in creativity, or to strive for status in your career, or just to live a sensual, pleasant life. Hedonism. Many people have sought meaning in that, I guess. Anyway, sure, well, I can tell you about the history of some great parties. All right, I can also tell you about the history of love as well. And in fact, they're involving, of course, my colleagues right now at Cornell in the history of love. In the survival situation, I also have some idea of what you're going to do because history tells me what did people do. One of the things that they did, especially Shackleton's people and other people in the situation, Arctic explorers, they kept a journal. So one of the things that I offer you to get on the boat is a journal. That's what they did. And in the journal, they were forced to seek what's the context. Who am I writing for? What are those people? What do I know about them? And these were people who knew their history. They also knew their Christian history as well. So you find that in their journals. But a journal isn't satisfying unless you can put it in that context as well. And when we look at Shackleton's example, we also see, was this guy totally a critical analytical leader who knew the skill sets he was looking for in his people? Yeah, but what did he really want to do? He wanted to take his dogs and his group of men, maybe a score of them, and go across the Antarctic with no radio, no of the modern kind of stuff. Now, is that totally rational? Seems to me it was really wacko, and people were dying that way and so forth. But he had a romantic strain in it. It's that romance, that sort of search for a kind of irrational search for the sublime. That's what really, in fact, mobilized people in history as you see that. People have been doing that as well. Let me just conclude then on something that people need. They need a kind of wisdom as well. They need a wisdom. Well, there was a philosopher, born in Spain, came to America, had a lot of influence, in fact, in Africa, George Santayana. And he's the one that is reduced to one quotation. If men cannot remember the past, they are doomed to repeat it. Sounds like wisdom. He's a philosopher. It's wrong. There are people, in fact, who remember the past so strictly and are so constrained by the weight of the past that they screw up all the time in new ways as well. And there are people, in fact, who don't remember the past, who put the past behind them. Let's not worry about that. Who do creative, innovative, and positive things, as well as do creatively evil things. So that's one of the things that we have to say that I'm not sure that, in fact, Santayana quite had it right. What are you going to be doing then? What are you going to be doing on that ship? You're going to be teaching each other. You're going to be telling each other stories. That's what we do all day. Telling each other stories. You've got to pass the time. You've got to entertain each other and ask those questions together. So what other book have I got to offer you so that you can entertain each other well, so that you can pass that time well, search for meaning, but also enjoy the search for meaning? I have a book by Judy Carter called The Comedy Bible, How to Be a Stand-Up Comic. And that's what I suggest you should think about doing as you drift across the ocean.
It just keeps getting better. Or actually, I mean, scarier. So, let me just make sure I get this right. Professor Weiss is going to practice his stand-up comedy with you and teach you, and you're going to learn together on the boat. And then he's going to sprinkle in a few talks about Christian history for fun. Okay? This guy is not making it to shore. You will kill him. He says, you know what we like to do? And you're like, what? We like to tell stories. Want to hear another one? And you're like, no. And he's like, but this is what we do. How about the Comedy Bible? Right? You will beat him to death with the Comedy Bible. It'll be a murder weapon. I'm saying, here's what he's done. He's actually a very clever arguer. He has promised you a lot of things. He said beauty, guide to wisdom. He went on and on. He used a lot of hyperbole. but he hasn't told you specifically how he's going to do that, other than he's going to tell you stories. I'm telling you now, the stories will be the death of you or of him, right? Making promises and showing exactly how you deliver are two different things. You can write your own damn journal. The journal can start by, on the first day, there was a history professor that we did not pick up. The rest of the story will go quite well.
Okay. Down to one more, and then the decision has to be made. So it was said by the devil's advocate that I liked sprinkling down knowledge and acted like a king and all that sort of stuff. And it reminded me, when I teach my ocean class, I often get sidetracked and tell personal stories that relate to some issue that I want to bring up. And there's a personal story here, which is I get the student evaluations, of course, evaluations at the end of the semester. And a few years back, it was the usual, yeah, great, passionate, amazing class, blah, blah, blah. And I get these odd ones that just kill me. This one was, he thinks if we don't think just like him, we're stupid. And I'm like, oh my God. And so every year since then, somewhere in the middle of the lectures, when I start talking about climate change or something like that, which some people have resistance to, I stop and I go, guys, and I retell that story to everybody. It's not, I don't want you to think like me, I want you to think for yourself. That's the whole purpose of this class, is to think for yourself. So, quite the opposite. I don't want people to think like me, I want people to think for themselves. It's my greatest mission is to get you guys to think for yourselves. And I apologize for not asking you guys what your majors are, but I only have 5 minutes, so if you get me on the raft, I'm going to personally come up to each and every one of you and ask you what your majors are. And we can work out sort of a distribution of work and labor when we get back to shore. The mathematicians, the economists, and et cetera, et cetera. The ocean's gone to crap while I was on duty. Does that mean we quit, you know, because it hasn't worked yet? We just walk away? Who's ever quit? You guys are at Cornell, you never quit. And I won't either. I'm in Ithaca, living in Ithaca away from the ocean. Well, I do orbiting satellites. I look at the whole planet. Humanity has grown large enough now to have an impact at global scales. The issues we talk about with oceans today are global scale issues, and what better way to do that than with satellites. Although I did have my graduate career was in microbial ecology, and I went to sea. I spent probably a total of almost a year at sea, getting my hands dirty and doing the work at sea. He likes to be in Bailey, and I have to admit, I do like being in Bailey. And I tell students usually in Bailey that when I was growing up, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and they always accused me of wanting to be the center of attention. And I tell the students, 900 students in Bailey, I go, now I have the perfect job. I get to be the center of attention with 900 people. So I do, but I do it in good nature. I do it with a lot of laughter and a lot of respect for the students. I don't do it out of ego and that kind of thing. So, thank you.
Now, at the beginning of the debate, the moderator warned you, be careful of the silver-tongued devil. Well, we've just seen him in action, right? He'd be an excellent devil's advocate because he was humble, almost too humble, right? I'm not trying to do anything bad. Let me put things in a different frame. He's concerned, supposedly, about global warming, how it's affecting the oceans, right? What is the #1 thing that affects the oceans? Humans, right? Humans, lots of humans, too many humans. Right? That's what's causing global warming. Man, it's not natural, it's man-made. So then he comes up here and kind of contradicts himself. He says there's been an apocalypse. And now what we need to do is rebuild society. And I'm the person to help you do this. I'll get you to shore safely. Bit of a contradiction. He's a complicated man. Right? Humble, but also an egotist. Some would call him megalomaniac. Right? I must be the center of attention for 9 people, but I like to be humble. Right? Can he have his cake and eat it too? I think that you'll be fine drifting around in the ocean without this expert. He just admitted a crucial flaw in his argument. His specialty is satellites. He will not have access to the satellites while he's on this boat. In fact, the satellites probably don't exist anymore in the post-Armageddon society. The one thing that everybody started saying at the end, they started seeing the wisdom of my words when I said, think for yourself. This is a metaphor. You're starting a new society. Do you really need to academicize and Cornellize and you're in the midst of finals. This is an unnatural, or about ready to be in the midst of finals. This is a unnatural environment. It's very unhealthy. I think what universities do to education is criminal. And it starts right here. Murderer's row, right? Make it hard. Test you. Test you again. Not good enough, right? You're not getting an A. Maybe you are, but you need an A+. That mentality, do you want to take that to the new world? No. You want to stomp it out. And you have a way to do it. Take none of them. Start a brave new world. Start a world without all the flaws of Cornell, of academia, of these expertise.
Alright, so does anyone not have a ballot right now? Alright, so please raise your hands, we'll distribute them, we'll collect them, and we'll quickly count them. Sorry? Oh, can you please say your names down the line, please? Can you say your name? Some people forgot.
I'm Sam Nelson.
Bruce Monger.
John Weiss.
Robert Shepard.
Aaron Bennett.
And just to remind everyone, if you vote for Sam Nelson, that's a vote for no one. So you're just going to keep on going, just to make sure. You're not taking Sam Nelson. Sam Nelson is a spiritual being from the depths of hell.
Actually, is the devil. You can morph it. Maybe it's just you. And the woods are all.
So you're a philosophy major.
I am a mechanical engineer.
Mechanical engineer. You gotta read my book and make these technological issues.
I do. I do a lot of philosophy.
There's a grad student in the lab that physics and
Yeah, I double major in philosophy, Cornell, engineering, curriculum, I need to vote here.
Is it a notebook like this?
Hey, did anyone not vote by any chance?
Did anybody bite the vote more than 5?
Did anyone, no, did anyone not vote?
Dead tie.
Okay, so,
Well, one of you guys have to bail out of the round. Yeah, nice guy.
Mark, paper, scissors. Tiebreaker.
Have the philosopher tell us your stage.
Wait, flip a coin.
How does a philosopher break a tie?
Hey guys, you can just flip a coin. That's what you do on a round.
Nobody has money.
You'll get a random.
all right, so we actually have a tie.
Let the three
Uh,
in tie vote.
I'm sorry?
Let the three who aren't in a tie vote.
That's not a bad idea.
Or you could vote. Did you vote?
We're for it though, we've already voted, yeah.
So you guys can do a runoff vote for the two left.
So I guess we can, so if you guys want to
Flip a
vote,
coin.
do another round. No? Okay, so professor vote, is that
Professor vote.
Professor vote, okay, so the tie is between Professor Shepard and Professor Bennett.
Oh, we don't need to just flip a coin.
So maybe we should do like a silent vote, so there's no like aggression.
Or you could have Professor Bennett and Professor Shepard lead, and you can do a hand vote.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Alright.
Just go out the hallway. Just go right out there.
Alright, we're gonna do a quick hand vote. Okay, so
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. Alright, for Bennett, raise your hand. And you don't have to vote for you, it's binary.
Okay, wait.
For Bennett.
Professor Bennett.
For Bennett, raise your hand.
Wait, is Bennett the philosopher? Or
Yes. Alright.
It should have been a blind vote.
Nah.
Like close your eyes, raise your hand. Is that-
Yeah, don't let me move.
Alright, and then for Shepard. Alright, come out guys.
I'm far enough up I actually can't see it.
Professors?
They actually left.
Okay, so the winner of today's Life Raft debate is Professor Shepard. The ceremonial orb of Life Raft. But I think you should join us all in thanking all the professors. I had a lot of fun. All right, have a good night, everyone. Thank you for coming.